And please join me in welcoming Mayor Jamie Clary. Mayor.
Where is the mayor? Where is he?
So thank you all. I'm sorry I'm running a little bit late. I'm here on West Main Street, head toward Bluegrass. Again, I apologize, but I'll go ahead and tell you a little bit of what I'm going to talk about. And before I even get there, since I'll just go ahead and chat a little bit right now. I appreciate everybody who's there. Appreciate our staff and our aldermen who are there. I don't think people really understand how much work our staff and our aldermen do and the passion they have for great work for the city. When I talk about the successes of the city, I hope I never give the impression that I'm pointing a finger at me, that I should get the credit. It's the staff and it's our full board. And I'm glad that they're there. Also appreciate the attendees that are there, and congratulations, Barry. And Barry, since this is your first day and I'm driving here, I'll go ahead and ask you a question, and I'll tell you a little bit about some things on the way there. I hope that the money we spent on traffic light synchronization works out and helps me get there as quickly as possible. But Barry, let's start out. I'm going to ask you a difficult question, and I'm going to ask a couple more questions when I get there. Folks that are there right now. But Barry, here's your difficult question. So where does the city find its responsibilities, its obligations, its opportunities? Sort of where is our constitution for the city of Hendersonville?
City website?
Well, it's a little bit more complex than that. The city's charter is provided by Tennessee Code Annotated. It's in several. It's part of Tennessee state law. It comes from Tennessee Code Annotated, Title 6, chapters 1 through 59. Specifically, it's in Volume 2B, and there are paragraphs and paragraphs and pages about what are the city's responsibilities, what the city does, what the city's functions are. But to me, it really comes down to this: is that it's our responsibility as a city to solve the most problems for the most people in the most feasible manner possible and in the most efficient way possible. To me, that's what I think of what the city does. So having talked a little bit about that and about solving those problems, I think now's a good time to bring up that we have a project going up here to solve a major problem. That's Walton Ferry Road and Old Shackle Island, to bring those into alignment. Now, people have been talking about that for 50 some years. It's really been a TDOT project for about 40. The city of Hendersonville has been involved for about 20 years on that project. And what's happening there is we're taking the two intersections, bring them in to one. The project started in February and it will finish May of 2027. It's going along as well as we planned it at this point, and it's moving well. The outcome of that, the benefit of that when it's finished, is that obviously we're going to turn those two intersections into one. But what's also going to happen is, in doing that, is it's going to be safer and it's going to help traffic move more efficiently. The efficient aspect of it is not only going to be at that intersection, but for intersections east and west from there as well. And the safety part about it is going to have an additional benefit in that we think it's going to spur some more business investment there, because now that it's going to be easier for people to turn on and off and safer for people to turn on and off, it's just going to invite greater opportunity. I'll give you and I think that we've all been in this situation, is that I've been at that traffic signal thousands of times. I think we've all been at that traffic signal thousands of times. Even when we're at one of those signals that's red, we see 30 yards ahead of us the signal turn green. That's confusing to us. And I think it's definitely confusing to people that don't go through that signal all that often. And so it's going to be very clear that a red light is red and there's not going to be a green light ahead of that that's going to provide some sort of confusion. Now, since we're talking about transportation projects, why don't I talk a little bit about Exit 8, the tunnel. So the tunnel is going to go under CSX railroad tracks. It's going to involve Gallatin Road, Saundersville Road, Vietnam Veterans Boulevard, Winston Hills Parkway. That's a project that I hear from people very often that it doesn't seem like we're doing anything on. I get that. I get that there's no dirt moving, but I need to caution people. that the construction phase of a project like that, and in most projects, the construction phase is the most visible, the most expensive, and the last. We've been working through the engineering of that, we finished most of that. We've been working through the environmental aspects of that, we finished most of that. We're now in the phase of acquiring property, and we've got offers out to several property owners there. When that's finished, we can start the construction on there. It's probably going to be about a $35 million project, and $30 million of that is coming from the state. So that's a huge benefit right there. And people often ask me about being patient on that project. How can I be so patient on that project? Well, because of $30 million. So as I'm speaking right now, I want you to know, I think I've passed now 10 traffic signals, and every one of them green. So it looks like in a couple more as I'm at Maple Drive coming up on Anderson Lane. So why don't we talk a little bit about that, about traffic signal synchronization. So we finished phase 1 a couple years ago, and that bought new equipment and also tied most of our traffic signals together with fiber optic line to an office in City Hall. So we have an office in City Hall where we can monitor and somewhat operate all of our traffic signals. That's a huge benefit. That was phase 1. Phase 2 has become a little bit more difficult, and phase 2 takes all of that and really puts together a process so that each signal knows when a lot of cars are coming to the next signal. Already we have a common clock for all those signals, and I just passed another traffic signal that was green. So phase 2 has been frustrating to us because we have about 7 more steps to go, and TDOT is funding about $4 million of that. We only fund about $100,000 of that. About 4 or 5 years ago, the city, some of our aldermen talked about maybe we just forego the state's money and we do this project ourselves and fund it ourselves. And back then the price was only about $2 million. It's frustrating that we still have about 7 steps to go, and every time we need permission to go to the next step, TDOT sends us emails and it takes weeks, sometimes months to get responses. It's even more frustrating that lately those responses have come with a disclaimer. And the disclaimer is that TDOT is going through some reorganization, and that the responses in the future might take even a longer period of time. The good news is that TDOT is reorganizing, so that's a good thing. And back to my patience on that. The $4 million that TDOT is spending on that, and the $30 million that TDOT is providing for the tunnel project, that's why I can be patient. Well, I'm pulling in bluegrass right now, so I will see y'all in just a second. Appreciate you hanging out with me and driving down Gallatin Road. That was really something to pass 13 traffic signals, every one of them green. So we are definitely making some progress. I just look forward to more pretty soon. I'll see you in just a second. Apologize for running a little bit late. Fortunately, the traffic lights helped me out a little bit there, and it worked out pretty well. Appreciate you all being here. Like I said, it's wonderful to see so many folks here. I need a couple seconds here to get a drink, so I'm going to ask Jesse to help me out. He's our COO sitting right here. Jesse, you're very fond of putting something, a part of a phrase in our memos and our emails and our staff meetings. And so I'm going to ask him the very difficult question as a fill in the blank. Jesse, you're very fond of saying that every problem is an opportunity for a solution. That's our theme here. Every problem is an opportunity for a solution. I talked a little bit on the car just a few minutes ago. I talked a little bit about problems, and I think that the role of city government is to solve the most problems for the most people as feasibly as possible, as soon as possible. And when I think about problems, I think back to a couple things in 2024 and 2023. One of the things I think about was the snowfall that we had in February of 2024. We got 5 inches of snow. We had 5 days below 32 degrees, and we had 3 of those days below 25 degrees, which is the temperature when salt reacts with snow and ice. We didn't do a real good job of clearing the streets. And one of our residents, Mr. Judkins, he sent me an email. We saw that opportunity for a solution there. So the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, we decided that we need to buy 2 new large snow plow attachments, 2 large salt boxes, and 400 tons of salt. And so when we had snow in February this year, we did a much better job of clearing those roads. And Mr. Judkins sent me an email. Now I know, and I don't want to give anybody the impression that the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, certainly not me, certainly not our staff, can make everybody happy, because
when we did such a good job of clearing those roads, we heard from some parents who wanted their kids to have an excuse to go outside. But I also think back to the tornado we had in December of 2023 and the opportunity we had there. Now, immediately our board mayor and aldermen saw what we had going on there, and they decided that we needed to waive the fees for inspections and permits. Now, we still expected the people who are rebuilding houses and rebuilding businesses to have inspections to make sure those buildings were safe. But the board mayor and aldermen saw that opportunity to help them out, so they waived those fees. And another thing they did pretty soon after that is we embarked on a sign grant program for people who had signs. We had a lot of signs on West Main Street that were 50, 60 years old. We wanted to replace ugly with better. And so with that sign grant program that was initiated from our staff as well as our board, Keith Free is our planning director, and Jay Ritterbeck helped with that. But I want you to know it's hard to understand what the impact was because you can't see what is not there. 36 signs, old pole signs, and sometimes broken faces were removed. About 24 of them are going to go back, but they're going to be nicer signs. They're going to be ground mounted with masonry and shorter. It's going to make West Main Street look a lot better. And we continue the opportunities we have on West Main Street because we're going to continue that sign replacement grant program. And my budget for next year that I proposed also has some grant programs for our facade renovations for private companies right there, as well as adding medians in West Main Street and improving the city entrance to West Main Street. Now I want to see if Melissa French is here. Melissa, are you here? I have a very difficult question. Jesse answered one a second ago, so I'm going to go way back in the back of the room. Melissa, how many full-time city employees do we have? Well, you're close. It's 366. And so now I'm going to ask everybody a little bit easier question. How many of y'all have employees? Raise your hand. How many of you have employees? Raise your hand, please. How many would give your employees raises if revenue was not an issue? If you had unlimited revenue, would you give your employees raises? Of course you would. Of course you would. And I would do the same thing. But we can't do that at City of Hendersonville. We don't have unlimited revenue, nor do you. And when I look at how we give employees raises, it really comes down to two options. Now, our sales tax continues to go up incrementally, and that's helpful. But we really have two options when we're talking about increasing our pay for our employees. It's going to be a property tax, or it's going to be cutting other services. When we talk about property taxes, that impacts businesses inordinately because of the formula for property tax. So I'm very reluctant to do that. And when it comes from other services, that also affects businesses. I'm going to give you an example right now. Chief Jim Jones is going to come up and talk to you about something that's going to help us out, and then I'm going to follow him up. Chief Jones, thank you for joining us.
So the mayor asked me to talk to y'all just a minute about the LPR cameras and fuses. And probably like most of you in your businesses, we are very much trying to get our technology, utilize technology more and more in law enforcement. And so two of these things, I'm not over here. Okay. See, I don't like standing in front of this thing. So two of the biggest ones we're using currently are fuses and our LPR cameras. I'm sure many of you going around the city have seen the LPR cameras, and those alert our officers anytime we have anyone come into the city that has been involved in a crime or is driving a stolen vehicle. Fusus allows us to tie all that in together, or in the event of a natural disaster like the tornadoes in December of 23, where we can pinpoint where our officers are at all times and plan for their deployment, where we need to send them next during a natural disaster. So one of the things recently, just to kind of give you an idea, we have one of our residents that had their home burglarized, and this occurred while they were at a doctor's appointment. Now, unfortunately, what our detectives found out fairly quickly was we believe this to be a former caregiver for this resident who knew what their doctor's schedule was, so they knew when to go break into the house. And sure enough, that's what they did. And our detectives were able to use these LPR cameras very quickly to determine who our primary suspects were, and within the next 24 hours, they were both arrested for committing that crime. So that's just one way of how we use our LPR cameras every single day.
Appreciate that, Chief.
Yes,
Thank you.
So it's work like that from our police department that really makes a big difference. I'm going to tell you another example. About 4 or 5 months ago, we had 3 individuals break into Sunglass Hut, streets of Indian Lake. These 3 individuals stole $450,000 of merchandise. Our officers found out that they had been involved in an international crime ring where they were able to resell this merchandise, and they had previously broken into 2 other stores. The police officers in those 2 other cities didn't catch them. Our officers did. And a couple days after catching those individuals, the manager of Sunglass Hut sent us an email. He said, "We really appreciate what you've done. I can go to work and feel safe. My employees can go to work and feel safe. And the employees of the stores around here can go to work and feel safe." That's huge. That's absolutely huge. And it's important if we want customers to feel safe here in Hendersonville, we have to have a fully staffed police department. We do exit interviews when we lose police officers when they leave somewhere else. And back in January, we were to the point that we had 12 open positions of police officers. We couldn't fill those positions as fast as people were leaving. The exit interviews told us something, but we asked our HR department, led by Jason Gallo and his staff, what is it that's happening? Now, we found many, many reasons, but a lot of it came down to pay. I feel like the city of Hendersonville should pay our staff in the 70th to 80th percentile, but our police officers were actually below 50. And I felt like we needed to do something. Fortunately, the board of mayor and aldermen agreed, and we increased pay for our police officers just a couple months ago by 10%. And since then, we've seen an influx of new applications for police officers who want to come work in Hendersonville, and we're moving toward being fully staffed. Unfortunately, one of those vacancies is Danny Ellis. Danny worked for Hendersonville Police Department for 26 years. He served our community, and he patrolled our neighborhoods. Danny contracted brain cancer for the 2nd time a couple months ago. He was loved by his fellow officers, and he was part of our family. And tomorrow he will be buried at 52 years old. With this theme of solving problems, I want to take you all back about 2 years ago. We talked about Music City Studios, and that they were coming to Hendersonville to build 5 buildings here, and what they were going to do as far as reaching out and building an employee base and providing more jobs for people in Hendersonville. And we were very excited about that. But here's the problem. Over the past year, we found out that they were no longer interested in this. We had this project, we had this opportunity off Molly Walton Drive and Free Hill Business Park. So I'm going to ask Jay Ritterbeck, our community economic planner, to come up and tell you how we saw that as an opportunity and how we addressed that. Jay, thank you.
Stand out of the way as much as possible here too. Yeah, so this was definitely a big problem that we had, this big piece of land over there. We were able to recruit in a business, Lincoln Property Company, who looked at the existing plans that were approved, and they redeveloped those plans just slightly. And what they're doing is a speculative development where they're going to construct over nearly 500,000 square feet of industrial space. It'll be flex space, so they can scale it if a company wants the entire building or just a piece of the building. They're going to be working with them to fill those up. It's going to be room for existing businesses in Hendersonville that are outgrowing their existing space. It's also going to be new businesses that are coming in. So we're working with GNRC, with Fort Sumner, to really focus our efforts in getting a lot of interest built in this for these 5 buildings. They broke ground in December, and they expect to have the first building complete by the end of this year, or possibly in January of 2026, with all the other buildings constructed and completed by the end of 2026. So very exciting in that area of town. It's a 60-year-old company. They partnered with Goldman Sachs to finance this project, and they're also doing some off-site improvements to extend Molly Walton over towards Forest Retreat to make that connection, so that when the TDOT 10-year plan has a new interchange at Forest Retreat and 386, it's really going to open up our entire industrial area. So this is a huge asset for the city, opening up a lot more space and property taxes, and really a big solution to a real big problem that we were facing in that area. And then second, when I joined the team with the economic development and community planner, they really revamped the entire position to not just be about recruitment, but also retention, and then using data to really spur data-driven analysis and decision-making. To that end, a lot of what I do is using artificial intelligence, one of which is this Placer AI, which uses cell phone data to track movements. And probably Meta has a big thing to do with this as well. But what we're able to do, in this example, I looked at the entire city of Hendersonville, and we really see what draw we have nationally, and 70% of our market people that come into town are from this area. But we're able to use these data for big, large scale, but also small scale, business specific. So an example of that is using Placer AI. We looked at In-N-Out that's coming and compared them to Chick-fil-A that we have already here in town. And we looked at what kind of potential impacts, traffic, and also revenue, and using these data to really spur that decision making based on data. So,
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
Okay, appreciate that. So you know that if you've been here a couple times, that my focus has very much been on jobs in Hendersonville for people who live in Hendersonville. Very often what we're really talking about office jobs, certainly professional jobs. But one of the problems we've had seeking office jobs is that COVID happened and fewer people are working in offices. And so the office space that's needed in downtown Nashville or anywhere isn't as much needed. And I'll give you an example of what's happened. In 2019, a downtown Nashville office building sold for $111 million. This is 2019. It was 50% leased in 2024 when it sold. William Stiles, where are you? How much? So in 2019, it sold for $111 million. 2024, how much? It sold for $17 million. Similar situation in Maryland Farms in Brentwood. They had a 5-story building there that was vacant. In 2013, it sold for $24.9 million. In 2025, January, it went from $24.9 to $6.3 million. That's what's happening in office space. That's what's happening in the office market. And Hendersonville is even riskier than those two markets. So we've pivoted a little bit as far as what we're looking for. Now, you see what the investment has been in Hendersonville right here for the past couple years. It is down 2024 compared to 2003, but let's be honest, Costco isn't going to build a building in Hendersonville every year. Fortunately, we have Hendersonville Medical Center. Hendersonville Medical Center has invested about $100 million in renovations and expansions the past several years. And I look at that as not only providing better and enhanced patient care, but also providing more jobs for the people who live in Hendersonville. And I thank you all very, very much for being so much part of this community and such a big part of the employment community. Thank you, Justin. However, the number one question I get when I talk about jobs, when I'm walking through Kroger, at the soccer fields, or at church, the number one question I get is, what restaurants are coming to Hendersonville? Jay told you a little bit about In-N-Out Burger. They're going to build at Anderson Lane and Gallatin Road. Fortune House is rebuilding on Walton Ferry Road. Rio Bravo is building at Bonita Parkway right in front of Half Batch Brewery. Jim and Nick's Barbecue right outside City Hall, close to Pinnacle Bank. And then Starbucks across the street. You can see the Starbucks building right now. And then we have another Chick-fil-A coming. But here's the problem. And I've got to remember this is an opportunity for a solution. How many of y'all have ever gone to Casa Vieja? Raise your hand. You've gone to Casa Vieja, okay? How many of you ever met friends and family at Casa Vieja? Raise your hand. How many of you ever met friends and family at Casa Vieja, but you went to the wrong Casa Vieja? Exactly. You see the problem we're going to have with Chick-fil-A. So I've asked that the Chick-fil-A restaurant at Glenbrook continue to be called Chick-fil-A. The new one over by City Hall, we are asking them to call that Chick-fil-B, but they haven't gotten back to us yet. Ed Swirlock, I saw you back there. Can you wave to everybody, Ed? Where is Ed? I thought I saw Ed. What about Jeremiah? There you are. Okay. Jeremiah, I have a question for you. How much is the city spending on paving this current fiscal year? $2 million is close. We're spending $7,340,000 on paving this fiscal year. That's a long way from the $1 million we spent in 2017, but why the drastic increase? Well, since I've been mayor, we've continued to increase that up to $7.34 million, but this is why we increased it. That $1 million in 2017, it enabled us to pave 12.3 lane miles of road. We have 536 lane miles of road. So at that rate, we could pave each road every 44 years. Our roads last about 8 to 12 years. If we waited 44 years, we would be repaving gravel and repaving dirt. So, being at $7.34 million in our current paving budget, we're able to pave 49 lane miles per year. We're now on pace to repave every road once every 10 years. And I can't believe I'm saying this, especially just from a couple years ago, but my budget proposal for next year is actually to reduce paving. And to reduce paving means we can spend money on some other projects and some other services, such as our trans plan. Now, our trans plan is, I'm sorry, it's not what you think. It's our transportation plan. So our transportation plan was initiated by Jesse Ackenroth, our COO, some of our staff, Sarah Locke, our Public Works Department, as well as our board and mayor and alderman. We have never had a transportation plan in the city of Hendersonville. Our transportation plan really was what was urgently needed right now, and what had some political whim and some momentum behind it. So we looked at 36 transportation projects and we ranked them empirically. It wasn't about what was hot right now or what was popular right now, but we looked where those roads went, we looked at how expensive those roads were, what services were provided on those roads. And like I said, we ranked them empirically, 36 of them. And the reason that's important is because of the residential growth that's happening and the residential growth that's coming. Currently, we have in the city of Hendersonville about 20,000 single-family homes. We have apartments, we have businesses, we have some condos. We have about 20,000 detached single-family homes. Currently, we have about 3,500 single-family vacant lots. That's if the owners do not ask to have the property subdivided or rezoned. So we know we have 3,500 additional homes coming to Hendersonville. And that brings me to the next most difficult question. Tara, can you answer for me? We've talked about some of yesterday's problems, opportunities for solutions. Today's problems, what do you think is next? The next thing we're going to talk about is tomorrow's problems. Okay. What I'm talking about is when I come together with our staff or our board, a lot of times we're talking about the problems we're trying to solve for today. We wish very often that a previous board or mayor or staff member had solved those problems for us. So we start thinking 20, 30 years down the road, a couple decades from now, what are people going to point at us and say, they should have solved that? It might be just something minor today. It might be a small, insignificant issue or a minor inconvenience that's going to get worse and exponentially more difficult to solve. And I'll give you a couple examples that we think about. Underground utility lines. We certainly wish that 7 decades ago somebody would have thought to put underground utility lines on all our major roads. A back entrance to Drakes Creek Park. If you've been in Drakes Creek Park on a Tuesday or a Thursday or a Saturday morning, you certainly wish that 30 or 40 years ago somebody would have thought we need a back entrance here. So we ask that question of ourselves now. What are those things that seem sort of insignificant and minor right now that are only going to get much, much more difficult to solve? And I'm going to give you a couple examples. We have too many vape sellers in Hendersonville. Fortunately, the General Assembly, just the past couple months, they are adding restrictions on vape sellers and what they can sell. And let's be honest, there are dangers in vaping. Initially, it became popular because it was supposedly a safe alternative to cigarette smoking. But in the research that I've seen, an analogy stands out to me over and over again. And the analogy I saw from a healthcare professional was, if cigarette smoking is like jumping off a 50-story building to your death, vaping is like jumping from the 40th story. The end is the same, it's just the beginning that's different. I'm going to ask our board and mayor and alderman in the next couple months to restrict the total number of vape stores that we have in Hendersonville, just like we restrict the number of liquor stores. And I also don't think that we should have vape sellers close to schools or parks. Another problem or opportunity solution I think about, not just for today and for tomorrow, I think about our deer situation. Gerald Barrett, could you stand up and wave to folks, please? So Gerald Barrett is the chairman of our city deer committee. He's been doing that for a couple years, and he has helped put together flyers that have gone to every household, a new website, education meetings for all our residents, and he has monthly met with the deer committee as well as has regular conversations, frequent conversations with the TWRA and the RDA. They're putting together a program that's going to launch this fall to connect property owners with hunters. Let me be clear. We're never going to send a hunter to somebody's property that doesn't want them there. We are never going to go on somebody's property. We are not going to hunt on city property. Our insurance won't allow us to do that. But we have a lot of property owners that would like to find somebody to hunt on their property. So what Gerald and his committee are doing is they're putting together a list of people who want to hunt, and they match those with people who own property that are willing to do that. That's something that's going to be launched in the future, probably this fall. But I don't want you to give the impression that what Gerald and his committee are doing is all in the future. I want to tell you what kind of success they've already had. In 2023, we had 107 deer-related auto accidents. In 2024, we had 79. In 2023, we had 8 deer-related injury accidents. In 2024, we had 2. In 2023, we had 2 serious incidents involving deer, and in 2024, we had 0. Gerald, we appreciate very, very much what you and your committee are doing. Thank you. I want to tell you, shift a little bit. I'm going to come back to Gerald in just a second and talk about Sam Walton. Sam Walton moved to Hendersonville in the 1960s. He had retired from the military. He worked at Nautiline Boat Company, and then he ended up working for the city. He was the one who founded the Chamber of Commerce. He started the Hendersonville Chamber of Commerce, and he did that in 1975. Nobody told him to do that. Nobody expected that of him. It was not his job. He just volunteered to do that. So a couple years ago, 6-7 years ago, we started honoring Sam with the Sam Walton Volunteer Community Service Award. And we've recognized 8 or 10 people for that. People who not only volunteer and help out the city, but people who have a real impact. And so, Gerald, for 2025, you are awarded the Sam Walton Community Volunteer Service Award. Thank you. There you go. We'll take a picture in a little bit, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you. Oh, we're going to take a picture right now. Okay. Thank you, Rick. Thank you all for that. When I also think about long-term problems and concerns that I have in solving some of tomorrow's problems, I think about our dependence on sales tax and property tax. That's our 2 main revenue streams for the city of Hendersonville that allows us to provide services. Now, I mentioned earlier a lot of that is driven by customer safety, and I appreciate what the Board of Mayor and Aldermen have done regarding that. But they also made a very smart move about 1.5 years ago when we looked at increasing the sales tax on items in Hendersonville. This is the local sales tax. We had a referendum where the residents of Hendersonville said they wanted to pay higher sales tax. But it was important that we explained there, as we were discussing this, that we were concerned about groceries, the most basic necessity of Hendersonville residents and most residents. So our board asked, in the wording that they put in this resolution, that we exclude sales tax, the increase on groceries. The Tennessee General Assembly doesn't allow us to do that. Now, state sales tax, the Tennessee General Assembly allows them to have a lower state sales tax on groceries, but cities couldn't. But like I said, we put it in the wording of our resolution, and soon after that referendum passed in March of last year, and then the sales tax went up on local sales tax on everything in Hendersonville, we asked the General Assembly, Representatives Slater and Lamberth and Garrett and State Senator Hale, can you change the law? We would like to have a lower local sales tax on groceries. What we were concerned about is we didn't want to give Hendersonville residents a reason to shop for groceries outside Hendersonville, and we wanted to give Hendersonville residents outside Hendersonville reason to come in. We wanted to protect that revenue stream. And fortunately, the General Assembly, and honestly, to our surprise, said you can do that. So now we have a 2.75% local sales tax on non-groceries in Hendersonville. We have a 2.25% local sales tax on groceries. Because soon after the General Assembly allowed cities to do that, Hendersonville was the first to enact a lower local sales tax, and we are still the only to have a lower local sales tax. And I appreciate the board coming up with that idea and asking for that. But I also think that it's important that we protect our property values. Again, a lot of that is related to safety, but a lot of it is also related to schools. I'm not foolish enough to think that people move to Hendersonville just because of what I do. A lot of it, much more than what I do, comes down to schools. Channel 17 did a story a couple months ago about some car break-ins. It's a neighborhood in Nashville. They had several car break-ins, and they interviewed a resident there. The resident's name was Mackenzie Gray. And Mackenzie's car had been broken into. Her comment to the reporter was, maybe we shouldn't live here. That doesn't help the property values of that neighborhood. Because when more people want to live somewhere, the property values go up. I think to Mackenzie and other people, maybe you should live here. And I know that a lot of them are looking for safety and they're looking for good schools. Because when there's a greater demand for your property, when people want to live in your city, the property values go up. When the property values go up, the property tax revenue is going to go up. And when the property tax revenue goes up for the city, it enables us to spend more on local services and allows the schools to spend more on their services. But when I became mayor, I asked the question, what can I do? What can the city of Hendersonville do to help our schools? And we ended up with a program that had nothing to do with the city and is not a city program, doesn't take any government money. We started the summer month of reading enrichment. Some of y'all have heard me talk about this before, because I was told about struggling elementary students that were really pulling the scores down for some of those schools. That as they were trying to learn to read, then came May and they were out of school. So I was told about the summer slide. There's a lot of these students that were struggling in first, second, and third grade. They were coming out of school in May, and when they would go back, they would experience that summer slide in reading skills. We wanted to address that. Fortunately, with organizations like Meta, United Way, Piedmont, Community Church of Hendersonville, many of you here in many, many restaurants were able to provide that summer camp about 3.5 weeks every year. Those students don't pay for it. And it has really become a ministry of Community Church of Hendersonville. We appreciate that very much. Now, one of the things I learned, and it shouldn't be a surprise to us, is how well a student reads in elementary school determines how well that child is going to learn in middle school and high school. And how well a child learns in school is how well they're going to earn afterward. We've had about 175 students go through this program in the past 7 years. Half of them have come back in August where their reading skills were in May. We eliminated that summer slide. And that was our objective. That was our mission. Eliminate that summer slide. And the other half have left school in May, gone through our program, and their reading skills have actually gone up. We're going to continue that program. And one of the ways that you can help is you could buy one of these license plates. You see them around Hendersonville. They cost $35. $32 of that goes to the program and allows us to serve even more students. Also, when I think about reasons to move to Hendersonville, I think about the impression people have of Hendersonville. I think about a couple people, especially those that bring positive media attention, positive national media attention. And I think very often about Joshua Berry and Joseph Newgarden. Joseph Newgarden and Josh Berry, both of them grew up in Hendersonville. Joseph won his second Indy 500 in a row last year, and he will be trying to do what no human has ever done before, and that's win 3 Indy 500s in a row in just a couple weeks. Josh Berry is at the top level of NASCAR. 10 years ago, he worked at Volunteer State Bank here in Hendersonville. He was a part-time racer, but he's moved up. And a couple weeks ago, he won the Las Vegas NASCAR race, and he is in the playoffs for NASCAR, and he continues to race every week. If you want to see something pretty funny, Google Josh Berry and Joseph Newgarden, Ellis Middle School. A couple months ago, they met back at Ellis Middle School, where both of them had gone to school and actually shared a class. And there's video of them talking with some of the students as the students quiz them on 8th grade math and English, and that's pretty good. But I also think about positive media attention from the Oak Ridge Boys. For 50 years, these guys have literally been traveling the world and talking about their home, Hendersonville. And I want to do more for them. So about 1.5 years ago, I talked to our General Assembly members, our state senator, and our state representatives, and talked about what could we do for them. And I specifically had in mind the bridge that goes over Drakes Creek between Sanders Ferry Road and Memorial Park. And I haven't talked much about this because we sort of want it to be a surprise. But we're going to do some of that bridge pretty soon. So that when you're driving on Johnny Cash Parkway, which is the name of that stretch of road, and you have Taylor Swift Playground to one side of you and Conway Twitty Lane to the other side of you, you're going to see a sign that says the Oak Ridge Boys Bridge. And that's in just a couple months. When I also think about problems down the road, I certainly don't want to make things more difficult on the people that follow me. I think about our debt. Now, the Beacon Center of Tennessee came out with a study last year that said the city of Hendersonville has the lowest debt per capita of any city in Tennessee, and I'm very proud of that. We've got a little ways to go. We currently have 4 obligations right now. They're like 4 mortgages. One of them is going to be paid off in just, about 90 days. Another one's going to be paid off next year. The next 2 will be paid off before 2033. That will be the first time since 1975 the city will be debt-free. Now, there are some times when you want to take on debt. That time is not now with interest rates so high. But I look forward to being debt-free in 2033 for the city of Hendersonville. And that brings me to this slide. You see that our debt burden is down, our property tax is stable, and our services are up. But like I said just a few minutes ago when I was in the car driving here, I don't want to point the finger at me for credit. It's a lot of people. It's our staff. It's our board. It's a lot of volunteers like Gerald. It's a lot of people wanting to be involved in the city. They're the ones that have helped make this happen. And if you want to help, I have the same call to action that I do every year. Just 3 things. Volunteer. A couple weeks ago, beautiful Hendersonville scheduled an opportunity for people to come pick up litter. We had hundreds of volunteers. The Chamber of Commerce right outside the door has a table to volunteer. Volunteer in our community. The next thing is spend your money in Hendersonville. When you spend your money in Hendersonville, you help these folks that are right here. You help the city and you also help our schools. And that brings me to the third one, support our schools. We all say we support our schools. But what do you do when you're having a relaxing afternoon, hanging out at home, and a 10-year-old kid from up the street who's selling something for the PTO or the school knocks on your door? Do you stay on the couch? Do you ignore the knock on the door? If you say you support our schools, answer the door. Buy what they're selling. Support their PTO, support their school, go to the school events, volunteer at their school. If you say you support our schools, support our schools. And you can buy one of these license plates as well. You can also volunteer and participate at the Freedom Festival and many other ways that the Chamber has opportunities to support our schools with fundraisers. It's just those 3 things I ask of you. Volunteer, spend your money in Hendersonville, support our schools. It's just those 3 things. And by doing those 3 things, you will continue to help me maintain this city as the best city in the best state, in the best country in the world. And I'm very, very grateful that you allow me to be its mayor. Thank you all.